Hello everybody, welcome to the second section of episode 4 of Sorry Not Sorry. Today we are joined by an incredibly special guest, Massachusetts Senator Patrick O'Connor. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Sorry, thank you for having me. I'm Pat O'Connor. I've had the privilege of being the state senator for the South Shore over the past 10 years. Before that, I was a city councilor in Weymouth for 12 years. I've had a real passion for politics and helping people and being involved and trying to provide solutions to problems for most, if not all, of my adult life, and I'm really looking forward to talking with you today about some of the challenges that are facing students here, some of the stuff that's going on up on Beacon Hill, and generally really trying to address the mental health crisis that we have and what the state's doing to try to work around that and do as much as we possibly can to provide people the assistance that they need.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to hearing about it. So we like to start off each of our podcast episodes with our interviews, and we're going to be starting a new tradition on the podcast where guests share something that they're not sorry about, because we are here today on Sorry Not Sorry. So, Senator O'Connor, what is something you are not sorry about?
So I think that from a political realm, I would say that one of the things that I'm not sorry for is my independence. A lot of people may look at that, especially in today's really hyper-charged political environment where you have to be on the left or you have to be on the right. I'm pretty squarely in the middle, and I vote in a way in which I think the district would be proud of. And that's one of the things that I'm not sorry about, is breaking with my colleagues a lot of times to vote for things that I think would benefit people down here on the South Shore. So from a political sense, it's that, and I would say from a personal sense, I'm not sorry about my obsession for Boston sports teams.
Oh, well, of course. What's Boston without its sports spirit? Did you watch how do you feel about the Knicks winning?
It's a sensitive subject, but no, my mom's from Brooklyn, actually, so she was cheering for the Knicks. She loves the Celtics. She watches every single game, but with the Knicks in the finals, she decided to root for them, and so she was really happy that they got that done for her brothers who are in New York and are fans of the Knicks and everything like that. I do think the Celtics could have got past them. It was a real shame that they dropped 3 in a row to the 76ers and got the best version of Joel Embiid that's been out in the court for better part of the past 5 years. So I just think we ran into a problem, and Derek White couldn't hit 3-pointers, and Tatum didn't play in Game 7, and it just kind of all fell apart. And it's really unfortunate because I thought that they had a run in them, especially with Tatum coming back and Vukovic being picked up, but the 76ers figured out a way that if the Celtics weren't hitting those 3-pointers, they didn't have a big man to compete with Embiid, and they used that to their advantage and were able to pull off those 3 in a row.
It's true. We are kind of in a new generation of the Celtics. I remember a couple of years back when we won 2024, right? Yeah. It was a completely new, we have a completely new set of people now in our starting lineup. It's a very young franchise too, the players that we have right now. So, there's some hope.
Yeah, I think that Tatum's coming into his prime too. He's still only 28 years old. People, I think that people see these players as sort of veterans now because they've been in the league so long, but they get in so young. There's people that were drafted last week in the NBA draft that are 18 years old. I mean, it's just incredible. And the growth and development of these people. My hope is that the Celtics have at least 1 or 2 more championship runs in them with both Brown and Tatum, if they can repair that relationship.
So. All right. So, you mentioned briefly how you have a passion and advocacy in politics. What sparked that in you?
So back when I was really young, my dad's a plumber. My mom's a nurse. My mom's retired. My dad hasn't yet. He's still plumbing at over 70 years old. And when I grew up, my mother worked nights at the neonatal intensive care unit taking care of premature babies at St. Elizabeth's and St. Margaret's in Boston. And my dad would work at various different sites that he had, sort of apartment complexes and things like that. And he would be the on-call plumber for them. And a lot of times he would get called up to the North Shore. And so with my mom working nights and my dad kind of bouncing all over the place, he would drop me off a lot of times, me and my sister, at my grandmother's house who lived in Cambridge. And my grandmother, when she was in her late teens and early 20s, worked up at the State House as a secretary for former State Representative Tip O'Neill, who went on to become the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives. And she always had a real passion for politics and public service. When she started her family, she gave up that career to raise her family, but it always stuck with her. And a lot of times when I'd be over there, we'd be watching the local city council meetings in Cambridge, and I remember very young age her explaining what was going on, where these people were concerned about something that was happening in their community, and they went to this elected group of people to try to voice their frustrations and concerns and try and have a problem be solved. And then every Sunday we'd go to my grandmother's house for dinner, and a few weeks had went by since I got dropped off that time and watched that meeting with her. And she told me, she's like, "Oh, Patrick, just so you know, that problem got resolved. The people who we elected to put in place to deal with those issues dealt with it, and the neighbors are satisfied." So for the life of me, I can't remember what the issue was, but I knew that it impacted me, or I was like, oh, that's really cool that these group of people are able to help their neighbors in their time of need. And that's what really started to get me, interested in it. And then from there, Weymouth went through a transition from a town to a city when I was in high school, and there was a lot of political activity. Everybody was running, and to that point in time, I got involved in sort of a campaign aspect. Ran for class officer, was the vice president of my class. Went to school over in London, and when I came back home, I was able to experience a lot of stuff that I didn't like and didn't see when I had left Weymouth, years prior. One of them being the opioid crisis. I'm 41 years old, and so the opioid crisis really hit our age group extremely hard. And in Weymouth, it was one of the worst, hit areas on the South Shore. And so I saw people that I had graduated with just a few years prior be chronically addicted at that point in time to prescription drugs. We saw a rise in crime and a rise in things that I just thought that there needed to be government intervention and for the government to step in. And I remember being home one year, I believe it was for no, it wouldn't be for Thanksgiving because we didn't get Thanksgiving off, but it must have been for Christmas. And I went to the city hall in Weymouth and said, hey, what are we doing to try to address this? There's people who are, the captain of the basketball team and all these other folks that I know who are now, addicted to drugs, and they, come from good families and all these other things, before we realize that, the opioid crisis is indiscriminate and hits everybody. And they weren't doing much. And so when I came back from London, I still saw that there was nothing going on, and I wanted to make a change. And so I ran on the issue of, when I was 21 years old, that, hey, I may be young and I might not have the experience that you're looking for right now, but I will work really hard to address this issue and all the other issues facing this town. I knocked on doors. We were able to raise a little bit of money, and on election night I was elected at 21 years old to represent 55,000 people as an at-large councillor in Weymouth. And in the 12 years that I was able to work inside of that space on the city council, we were the second community in the United States to put Narcan on all of our public safety vehicles. We created a system with South Shore Hospital and our police department that if anyone overdosed, that we would be able to have an unmarked car with a plainclothes officer who actually lost his brother to the opioid crisis, go and talk with them and hand them a packet of all the resources that were available to them. And so I'm really proud that we were able to do those things. And really it started, my journey in politics was seeing by example what was happening and something that my grandmother was interested in and passionate about, to then that kind of sparking inside of me when I got back from college and wanting to make a change. And that's been the trajectory of the past 20 years. And why I always come with an open mind to every conversation and every issue that we have is that you never know how much people are hurting or what people need and how much government can really help, especially if it's a functioning government. And in Massachusetts, we do have a functioning government. I think down in DC, it's really chaotic. But in Massachusetts, we work together as Republicans and Democrats to try and, provide people hope and opportunity and everything that I would think that people expect our government to do.
On our last episode, we had Emily Ludwig on the podcast, and she talked about her experience with substance abuse and helping from a recovery standpoint. And a large part of Safe Harbor is also about mental health. So from a legislative perspective, what would you say are your top priorities regarding mental health and mental health awareness? How does that go hand in hand with your campaign with opioids?
Yeah, I think it does go hand in hand, because I don't think you're going to see the opioid crisis without the mental health crisis and vice versa. They really do align themselves, unfortunately, on the same path. And so what I would say is the biggest issues is access. Right now, especially since COVID, we've seen a rise in adolescent mental health in particular, and we as a state need to address that. And so one of the unique circumstances during COVID was that the federal government gave us a lot of money as a state. and they expected that our economy would dip because they thought that there would be high unemployment, and they thought that there was going to be a lot of changes to the way in which Massachusetts would be able to collect revenue. But we adapted. We worked from home. We were able to figure things out. People were able to do more with less. Supply chains started picking back up, and the state actually grew our economy during COVID. And so we used those dollars we got from the federal government, $400 million of it, to invest and to reimagine our mental health care system, because we knew it was the most pressing issue before us. And we knew that when we left COVID behind us, so to speak, that we were going to need a lot more individuals to work in the profession. So of that $400 million, $122 million went to hire 2,000 new mental health professionals by providing them assistance with their tuition, by incentivizing them to enter into the field. Mm-hmm. We were able to expand bed access. And really what we are trying to do with targeted investments, and it's not going to happen overnight, but what we're trying to do is build a mental health care system that is parallel and as strong and as well recognized as our general health care system that we have, which is obviously world class. And it's going to take time. I think that mental health was underfunded for a long period of time. I think it was stigmatized. When you talk about when you're raising awareness, I think the biggest thing that we've been able to accomplish on the awareness end is that we have lowered the stigma when it comes to mental health issues, and doing as much as we possibly can to help certain groups that we know are struggling even more. Some of our veterans, members of the LGBTQ community, that we know are struggling a lot more than some of our other peers, just by data alone that we have been able to collect. So it's all about continuing to make these targeting investments and have this healthcare system grow to a point in time that we know it's going to be the best in the world, and we're not going to stop until that happens. And we've continued to make investments every single year into making sure that it does grow, and that we do get a system in place that people should expect and deserve. And one of the things that we added to this was every single year an insurance mandate that every individual, the same way that they have an insurance mandate that they go to the doctors once a year to get their annual checkup, their annual physical, we also mandated that every insurance company that does business in the state of Massachusetts has to cover a once a year mental health checkup. So if that individual wants to go and get a consultation or try and figure out and say that they haven't been feeling themselves lately, that they have that access, and that it's going to be covered, it's going to be insured and covered, and they don't have to pay for that. That's one of the things we've done. So it's really, I think, trying to look at our general healthcare system and what's worked there, and start to build upon that by adding to the foundation of things that we have in the mental health care space, and growing that the same way that we've grown our healthcare industry over the course of the past 100 plus years.
Wow, that's wonderful. I know that funding has always been a major hurdle in policies in general, and your office seems to be prioritizing a lot of long-term funding for mental health, would you say?
No, absolutely. Yeah. No, and even in the short term, we find organizations that are down here on the South Shore. One of the things that I take the most amount of pride in is being able to bring money back from Beacon Hill to support organizations on the South Shore that are doing amazing things. And without them, maybe government would have to step in and do those things, or maybe those things just wouldn't be done. And so one of the organizations that we support is JPH at Ferry Hill. We've supported them with over $400,000, I think it is, to date. We met them as an organization when they were first getting started. I love what they were doing, where it was really, focusing in on supporting women who have suffered domestic violence, people who are struggling with mental health, people who are struggling with substance use. It's really a catch-all of a lot of the things that people need assistance with. And we decided that was going to be one of those organizations that we wanted to fund at the local level. While we continue to fund the higher level stuff, the $400 million investment into mental health that we just talked about, as we continue to do that, it's really important to me that local-based organizations also get that funding, and it can also get that validation from the state, but also that investment that they might need to take their organization to the next level.
That's incredible. All right, so in your 10 years in office, have you seen any changes in perspective regarding mental health and mental health support on the legislative front?
I think it's been flipped, honestly, from when I first went in there, and I would say not the unknowns, but more the, half-truths about what mental health and substance use was. I think that it's been flipped where people have such a firm understanding of what's going on now. You know, we've integrated this into our K through 12 education system. We want people to not be stigmatized or not show stigma to individuals who are suffering with mental health. We know how prevalent this is. And going into COVID, I think that was already changing. And then once COVID happened and we see how our numbers have just grown from then, from the isolation and from just the confusion and the mistakes in some instances that were made during that period of time. And we've seen that lead to, you know, record numbers of requests to our office, to our hospitals, of people who are in need of help. And it's our job in government to find a way to do that, to find a way to create more beds, to get more people, even though I think that the numbers have significantly lessened, but the people who are still, you know, stigmatized about asking for help, or people who feel that it's a weakness, and to just basically go out there and say it's not. It's incredibly common. There is help that's available to you, and we want to provide that. And, you know, I can imagine how difficult it is, especially as adolescents who are, you know, in high school and who are struggling a little bit, or some traumatic event happens in their life, or something that they think is the end of the world, but it's really not, has happened to them. And how difficult it might be to talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm not feeling myself, I need a little help. And what we want to do is say, no, you need to ask for that help. You should ask for that help. And it's on us to make sure that that help is there when you do ask. And that's government's role in this. And I think over the last 10 years, we've really increased access, decreased stigma, and really want to make sure that people have as many avenues and opportunities to ask for that help as possible.
Yes, accessibility is incredibly important. We talked a lot about that in our episode with Emily Ludwig and her work with Safe Harbor. To switch gears a little bit, what are your thoughts on social media, and how is your office working to address the mental health challenges associated with social media and technology use among teenagers?
So there's actually a bill that passed in the House that would limit access for adolescents to social media. We didn't pass that in the Senate, so we passed a cell phone ban. We think the first step the state should take is a universal K through 12 bell-to-bell cell phone ban to start getting phones out of kids' hands. And obviously there's caveats, because people always ask about, well, what happens if there was an emergency, or what happens if, you know, they get sick at school and they need to call their mom or dad. All that stuff will be carved out, and there'll be, you know, not the most stringent rules in place, but the intent of what we're trying to do is limit the amount of cell phone use. And we think by doing that, that will also limit the amount of social media use during the school day, and hopefully lead to better habits. The House decided to do an all-out social media ban, and I believe it was for 14 and under. It could have been 12 or under, or 14 or under. I forget the exact number again, because we didn't bring this bill up. And we have some concerns with that. Some of the folks have come out in the civil liberties space to talk about the fact that there might be a violation of privacy for these kids if there's a social media ban. But I think that in general, what we're trying to say with whatever bill ends up making it to the governor's desk is that we have a problem. We have a problem with overusage of social media. We have a problem with bullying that happens through social media. And we have a problem just with a society that's growing up on this and not understanding that there is a whole world out there that aren't in reels or in posts or in stories or in TikToks. And we want people to be able to explore those worlds and not be stuck in social media and stuck scrolling all day long. We think that it's going to be detrimental to individuals' mental health, their general health. And so we need to find a better way. And it's one of those things that I don't think anyone ever anticipated, the overconsumption of social media that we see now. But it's amongst our future. You know, you are our future, and we need you to, you know, enjoy yourself and use social media as, you know, as you see fit, but not to be stuck down the rabbit hole that so many kids are getting involved in right now, so many students and young adults, that social media is a crutch, and it's what they use continuously to, you know, kind of see how their world looks or present a world that doesn't exist. And so we need to do a lot more to be able to rein in social media. And I think we need to work with the social media companies to achieve this. I don't think it's going to be a government versus social media thing. I think that at the end of the day, it'll be all of us kind of coming together and saying, yeah, we know that this isn't long-term going to be healthy for individuals. What do we do to limit this? And there are tools out there now that you can put time limits on or restrict some pages and do those things, but it's really not enough, because the access, you talk about the limited access that we have to mental health services, the access to social media just continues to grow. I mean, you have it in your phone, you have it in your iPad, you have it in your computer, you have it everywhere, and it's omnipresent. And the amount of shares that go on every single day, and
the way it tracks
it tracks your algorithm. And how, I was telling some folks the other day that I was going to Privetti's in Hanover, and I had stopped for a sandwich right before, and I just took out my phone to scroll as I was waiting for my sandwich to be made. Again, I'm guilty of this as everyone else is. And I got an ad for Privetti's, and I was like, I'm already on my way there, but they just know.
It tracks everything across all apps.
And it's getting more sophisticated too. There's a colleague of mine, Simon Cataldo, who's a state representative, and he was actually able to try out some of this new technology that you can actually use your brain without actually saying something to control something on a telephone. And so you can actually move things around just by thinking of the move and wearing these headphones, and it actually works. I think it's still in like a beta stage right now, that it's not more readily available, but that's where all of this is going. And that's why we in government...
terrifying.
I know. That's why we in government need to figure out something, and something fast. And I think starting with cell phones makes the most amount of sense, because we know it's going to have the biggest impact right away, and then move on to social media, and then move on to artificial intelligence, and then move on to these next things, because it's not going away. Big tech has really dug their heels in, especially at our government at the federal level, and we need to figure out how to best respond to that by letting this technology continue to grow, responsibly grow, but at the same time knowing that there's going to be societal ills that are being created by this, and that we need to do as much as we can to get in front of all those things.
Yeah, so would you say you see social media more as a burden rather than a tool?
I think that at first it probably became a tool, and then I think that it has devolved into a burden. I think that the amount of fake news that's being presented on social media right now is of grave concern when it comes to the political discourse we have in America. And I think that we see it all the time when somebody posts something, and then you have 50 comments of people going, after that person for whatever it was. And it just shouldn't be that way. And that's not how we are. It's not very American to hide behind a keyboard and go after somebody because of a belief that they have or something that they want to say. And it's just, it's not the discourse that we want in America right now. And I think that it's led to it's fueled a lot of the division that we see in our national politics. And that needs to be addressed as well, because that's not even an adolescent thing or a young adult thing. That's more of an adult consequence of overconsumption of social media.
I agree. It's a great point. So what is one of your personal legislative passions?
Services and policy for individuals with disabilities. We have such a strong history here on the South Shore, where there's actually a documentary that's being made right now that highlights a story of South Shore moms who, during a period of time when they had their children were born with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and doctors at that point in time were telling the parents to go home, take care of their other children, and institutionalize that child because they would never amount to anything. And these are the moms that stood up and said no. And they took their child home, and many of them are still alive right now and contributing members of the South Shore community. And what they said was, they stood up and said, no, we're not going to do that. And then they went even further and said, oh, and by the way, you're going to educate my child. And after that, you're going to have inclusion, and to make sure that these children, as they grow up, have opportunities to work. And they really created a lot of the foundation for the support systems and rights that are in place for individuals with disabilities. And so, although we have the best system, number one in the country by far for services for individuals with disabilities, there's still work that needs to be done. And I feel very honored and privileged to be able to work alongside a lot of these women still. Taffy Nothnagel, who's a Cohasset resident, just got inducted into the Special Olympics Hall of Fame. I went to her Hall of Fame induction a few weeks ago. And being able to work alongside these women and their families and their children, to be able to continue to advance those goals and know that that's something special and unique to the South Shore, is that we had this group of women who stood up and fought for equality and justice and opportunity, to be able to continue on those coattails and to be able to help in the way that I can is the thing that I'm most proud of. And we have a lot of disability legislation. We were able to pass one, Tommy's bill, Dana's law. Tommy's bill we're still working on. Dana's law, essentially, what happened when I first got elected in 2016, we had Ann and Paul Joyce, who live in Weymouth, come to my campaign office, and they said, we need to show you something. And they showed me a video of their son being abused in a group home. And this all came because their son Dana stopped talking. They would pick him up every weekend, they would bring him back home, and he would stop talking and got really apprehensive when he got back to his group home. And so Mother's Intuition led his mom, Ann, to put a nanny cam type of situation in his room and caught this abuse on video. They got to the state police. The state police took one look at it and started making arrests. And the problem came when, after the arrests were made, before all of the, judicial and, further criminal justice elements took shape, one of the individuals who abused her son applied for a job at another provider organization that handled and that helps individuals with disabilities. And it happened to be the same organization that Dana's mom, Ann, worked for. And so that was the only reason why that person was stopped from getting employed, because they had not gone through the steps yet, or something was missed along the way where it wasn't tracked that that individual should never work with somebody that has a disability because they have a burden of proof with a videotape of them abusing them. So what we did is we put in place a registry so that there's an extra layer of protection. So if the quarry misses it, or if the organization doesn't ask for it, or if something falls along somewhere along the way, that every organization now has to track this registry, and this registry, which is private, but to access, it's not something that the public can access, that they have to check this individual against this registry. So if Joe Smith goes for a job, and 7 years ago he was convicted of abusing an individual with disabilities,
it'll show up on his record.
It'll show up on that registry, and they'll make sure that that person can never work in the field of social services for individuals with disabilities again. And we're actually expanding this because we want to have this done for people who are elderly and others, to make sure that we have the right people who are working to help our most vulnerable in our society, because we can't let something like that happen. And it can't just be off of a coincidence that a mother whose child was abused works at an organization is the one that raises the flag that this is a mistake and this shouldn't happen. So we wanted to make sure we have a lot more checks and balances when it comes to the care and protection of individuals with disabilities. And so we're really proud of that, and that's been really the forefront. I go to every single event that is held, but we have some amazing provider organization. I would say, world-class provider organizations here that do amazing things. We have things that go above and beyond, like respites and job working opportunities and autism support programs, and we've really built a strong infrastructure for supports for not just individuals with disabilities but their families.
That's wonderful. Your office seems to be buzzing with a bunch of issues that are being solved. So how would you say you regulate your stress during pressuring times in the office?
It's interesting too, because this isn't a 9 to 5. There could be, like tomorrow, I have a letter scheduled tomorrow, and that's I'll do my dry cleaning and grocery shopping and things like that. Whereas typically, people would go out on a Saturday or Sunday and get that done because it's their weekend. So I think time management's really important when it comes to stress, and knowing that I'll have, pockets of time to be able to do all of those things, even if I have a 4 or 5 hour workday on a Saturday or a Sunday, being able to accomplish those goals and get those things done. I go to the gym, that helps, being able to do that. It's nice now, so the gym that I have is a pool, so I go to the pool. I like to swim. Go to the beach, just make time for yourself. I think that that's really important, especially in a what can be high pressure, what can be 50 to 60 hour a week job, and can be all 7 days, or sometimes it's I get a text from my chief of staff sometimes being like, you've been on for 18 days in a row, like I've scheduled you off these days. And again, it's not 9 to 5 all those 18, but it's something in the district that happens. But I want to be present, I want to be supportive and out there. I want to hear people when they come to me and say that they have a problem, and try and see if we can solve it. And so we try and make ourselves really accessible. My team's awesome. My team's able to help out in a lot of the a lot of the things that we're not able to make if I'm up in Boston and there's an event down here. Elizabeth, my district director, is able to help out with that. We have anywhere between 5 and 7 people who reach out to our office every single day with a constituent case. We have Mike in my office to do that. We try and get messaging out through Megan in communications, and Tom does policy, and Greg, my chief of staff, is kind of the jack of all trades. So
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, I really rely on my team to help out too, where they see how busy it gets. They see these different meetings, and I would say that it's tough. I try to not have a lot of stress. I really do. I try and manage that very well, just because I know that it would probably just compound more of these things. If I got stressed out about having to do an event on a Saturday or a Sunday, I'm glad that I don't, because I really do love this job, and I feel like every event I go to is an opportunity to meet somebody new, or provide somebody a citation for getting an Eagle Scout award or doing something amazing in the community. So I look at this as, being able to have the privilege of representing all of the people in these 8 towns, being very middle of the road in my political approach, so I can very easily listen to and understand different points of views, and then being able to be out there and be the South Shore's biggest cheerleader when it comes to accomplishments that people young and older are making to make our part of the world better.
Wow, that's wonderful. Sort of off the record, whenever I interview my guests, I always get so impressed at how introspective they are and how quickly they can answer questions. So how did you learn how to be so fluent? Or maybe that's not the right word, but how do you find the best ways to answer questions so quickly?
I would say that so the way that I would say best is passion, like to really have the passion for what you stand for and what you believe in. And then I think it's really kind of finding yourself into how you want to present. A lot of, people, I think, I've had a lot of these too. A lot of people, kind of know what they want to say, but want to stick to more of a sort of canned, all right, here's the response to how, this is going to go. I think speaking from your heart and being able to get out exactly what you believe allows you to really kind of comprehend and put those sentences a lot better. That's always been mine. And then I've it's a lot of trial and error. When I first got on at 21 years old, I wasn't this polished or, all this. And, I went different ways where it's like, oh, I'll write a speech and I'll memorize it, and that's the speech that I'll give. And then I just found that, no, after, 20 years of doing this, it's just speak from your heart, know your subject matter, be well-versed, be well-educated in, the stuff that you're doing and accomplishing. And that's kind of been my best advice I could give you, is just find the passion for it and know the subject.
All right, definitely noted. Okay, so our final question today, thank you so much for coming in, is,
of course,
are you proud of yourself?
I am proud of myself in the aspect of the work that I've been able to put in to maintain this position. I don't think that it's selfish of anyone to be proud of themselves. I think that they should be. I think that people should be able to find pride in everything that they do, whether it's in their family, in their job, in their academic studies. There's a lot of reasons to be proud, and I think that I have a strong belief that there's a great future out there that we're able to hopefully, continue to be proud of. And I think that there's work that we need to do that our government, especially down in DC, should be looking at to make themselves proud, or have people be proud again in the way in which they operate. I think that that's lowering the temperature and the noise that's going on down there, and trying to be as productive as you possibly can be, because I'm very proud of what we do in Massachusetts. When you look, not just personally I am proud of myself. I feel like I go out there and present myself both in the public life and in the personal life the same way, and I'm proud that I'm able to do that, and have people around me who love me and who support me and cheer me on, and I try and do the exact same thing in return. But when it comes to my political career and what we do here in government, I am so proud of Massachusetts, because when you look at it, during the period of time that we've had this podcast today, somebody from somewhere else in the world has probably flown to Massachusetts to use one of our hospitals. We have the best public education system in the entire country. We have the best services for the disabled, as we talked about. We're making incredible investments and strides into mental health. We have the best services for our veterans in the country. We have the best services for our seniors in the country. These are things that are pretty universal, where it's not left or right or, progressive or conservative. These are things that matter to people. And Massachusetts has always been that state that when you fall upon tough times, that the government is there to extend a hand to help you up. And that's not changed despite the fact and rhetoric and all these other things that are happening at the national level. And so when I look at that, and then I look at the things we've been able to accomplish, like Horace Mann creating public education and being a member of the Massachusetts State Senate, being the first state to tell people that they can love whoever they want to love, being the first state to say that healthcare is a human right. Those are the things that really fuel me and make me very proud to be in Massachusetts. And there's a new terminal at one of our airports, and it shows all the things that Massachusetts was first in, and it extends a long percentage of this terminal. And it starts in our early days being the first state to abolish slavery, and it goes to being our medical advances that happened last year that we were able to accomplish. So I'm very proud of myself personally, in a non-conceited way, and I'm incredibly proud of the work that we're still able to do as a functioning government. And my hope is that at some point in time, the smoke can clear and the noise can lower, and people in Washington can look at Massachusetts as a functioning government that existed during a time of incredible division and chaos and rhetoric and the rise of social media and big tech and all of these other things that are in the backdrop of our everyday, daily politic that we see, and that they can look to us, and that we can provide that assistance once again of being, that domino that hopefully continues to fall across the nation, like we have so many other times that are outlined on that billboard of our firsts. I think it's in Terminal B.
I'll check it out. I'm going on a trip soon, so
awesome.
I'll make sure to stop by. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. Any parting thoughts?
No, I just want to say it's awesome that you're doing this. I wish you a great summer. I know that, I'm not sure when this is going to air, but I know that school
we'll send it to you.
School just ended for all of you. So I wish you and everyone listening to this who's a student in Cohasset a great summer. And I just really appreciate you highlighting these issues. I think that it's really, really awesome that you have this level of maturity to be able to talk about really important issues that are clearly impacting your peers here at the school. And we want to show that the government is working on this. It might not be as fast as we need to, but we hear you.
All right, we appreciate all the work you do for our community and all of the legislative support that you've given to the South Shore. Yes. Well, thank you so much.